In this lesson, we're going to cover testing. Now, testing is making sure that the code you wrote is working properly within your application. You're pretty much writing code that acts as a security measure to make sure that the code you wrote was actually doing the thing that you intended for it to do. It's like a little security officer for your applications to make sure that it's working and behaving just how you want it to behave. Now, this might seem a little bit weird. You're writing code to make sure that the first code you wrote is good. But I want you to think of your applications as an actual product. Now, for conventional products, let's say an iPhone or something like that, you run tests and make sure that they're working properly. So let's say you're building the next iPhone, you might run tests while you're developing, you might run tests before the actual release of it, you might even run temporary tests while you're on the production line to make sure that it's getting produced properly. And you're doing all those tests because you want to make sure that the iPhone, when it goes out to the end users, is working just how you want it to be working. So now apply that same logic to your application. If your application is a product, you want to be running tests throughout the application process while you're developing it, and then you want to make sure it's working exactly how you want it to work before it actually goes out to people. And a nice thing about writing tests for applications or other code is that you can pretty much automate it, and you only have to write that test once, and you don't have to have any human behind it, actually doing the test. You just click play and it check if it does the right thing. Now in Flutter, there are 3 types of tests. There's unit testing, widget testing, and integration testing. Now each of these does a specific type of test, so ideally you'd probably want to do all 3 of them. Now unit testing is easy to remember because it's in the name. Well, I guess widget testing is in the name too, but anyways, for unit testing, you're testing a single unit of your application. And usually what that means is you're testing a single function of your application. So let's say you have a to-do application or something, you'll have a function to add a to-do. You might want to test that specific function, and you'd use a unit test to test that because it's doing one thing, and that's adding the to-do. The other type of testing is widget testing. So widget testing, also like in the name, tests the widgets. So while unit testing tests the logic and whether the function is working properly, widget tests the UI and makes sure all the elements within your Flutter application, the widgets there, are working how they should be too. So let's pretend this was a Flutter application. You could definitely write a unit test that checks whether this toggle is moved over to the right whenever you press it. And the last one is integration testing. So integration testing tests the complete app and whether it's working properly. So other 2 tests, you can't really test anything that's outside of the application. So for example, if you have a database connected, to make sure it's connected properly, all that, you can't really do that unless you're running integration tests. So integration test is the whole application, and you can navigate through screens and do all that stuff. So in the next couple lessons, we're going to take all 3 of these, dive deeper into them, and then give you a bunch of examples that you can work with.